right, Grizzlies, welcome back to another awesome school year. I hope you guys are ready to rock and roll this year. But before we can get rolling down that racetrack here at Grand Prix Elementary, we do have to stop and take some time as a part of our prep for this school year to take a minute to vote on two different budget ideas for you guys and for our students. Okay, so here we go. As a quick reminder, let's talk very briefly about Grand Prix Elementary's vision and mission. Grand Prix's vision. Grand Prix Elementary School is a warm, inviting school where all students are encouraged to strive for excellence, academically, socially, and emotionally. We ensure daily that students are welcomed into a safe and supportive atmosphere where their gifts and talents are supported and nurtured. Let's take a moment to reflect on our practices as individuals over the past year or even over the past 3 years, right? Think about that student or that group of students who we were unable to assist to the finish line academically, socially, or emotionally. What would have helped us to do that if something was a little bit different? What is that something? Well, let's talk about our mission. Our mission is to aspire to ensure that students know that there is power in being a lifelong learner. At Grand Prix Elementary, we dream big, we work hard, and we expect to excel. Our emphasis is on helping our students to understand that hard work and effort will pay off when they are consistent and they persevere. So as you hear that, again, take a quick second to think back and then think about what were some of the things that maybe stunted our students' ability to persevere in the last year over the last 3 years. Well, before we discuss those two different budget options, we first have to take a look at and briefly talk about our scores over the past 3 years. We're going to start first with talking about our reading scores. In 2018-2019, that's going to be that light blue bar there on the screen, our reading scores were pretty good. We saw growth that year, but if you look closely at the data, which subgroup do you notice is scoring significantly lower than the rest? It's going to be our English learners and our students with disabilities. In the 2021 school year, it's going to be that dark blue bar there. Something kind of interesting happens. Our Black and Hispanic student achievement drops pretty significantly, while the achievement scores of our white students notably increase along with our students with disabilities, while our English learners' scores stay the same. Last school year, again, some interesting data here. Again, our Black students are trending way south. Our white students are right along with them. But conversely, our Hispanic and EL students saw some major gains, and students with disabilities also took a small downturn. Next, we have our math scores. In the 18-19 school year, we saw our Hispanic and white students really taking the lead with growth, leaving our Black students, English learners, and students with disabilities with a pretty significant gap to fill. The 2021 year, again, expected drops across the board. And then in the 21-22 school year, where we're a little more normalized and trying to get everybody back on track, we see that our Black students are back on track with 18-19 numbers. Our Hispanic students are blowing it out of the park, while our white students and our EL students took a dip, but our students with disabilities also had a massive decline. And finally, let's take a look at our science scores. Everyone's doing very well in 18-19 with the exception of our students with disabilities. As expected, again, drops happened in 2021, and then in 21-22, we start seeing some really good growth for our Black and Hispanic students, but much slower growth with our EL students and students with disabilities. You see here on the screen, there is no data reported for our white students between the years of 2018 and 2022. And then for the 2021 school year, there's no data reported for our students with disabilities. The reason for this no data reported text there is because, according to North Carolina report cards, for counts that are less than 10, there's not going to be any kind of data that can be displayed. Now, what I want for you to remember here is that none of what I've shared is to say that any of these results is any one person's fault, okay? But rather, this is just an opportunity for us to focus in on what's driving these trends, whether that be something that's happening within our school, situations at home for our students, or still some more of those residual post-COVID burdens that are on all of us. Taking a look at these numbers, helps us to understand where our focus has been and where it should be presently. But I'm hoping that some of the additions that that are about to be proposed will help us to steer us in the right direction where we see growth across all subgroups. All right, so let's talk about our school improvement goals for this current school year. Over the summer, our school improvement team voted on 4 of our school improvement goals for the 22-23 school year. As I read over these, I want you guys to start thinking about what they might mean to you individually and then what they might look like in action, okay? As I mentioned earlier, also think about what's missing that can help to make our mission, our vision, and these goals a more realistic gain for all of us. First of those 4 goals is A 2.07, which says all teachers will include vocabulary development as learning objectives. So while I'm sure we all do this anyway, our focus is going to start being common vocabulary across the different content areas. So sure, we're all including vocabulary, but let's start putting a focus on those EOG specific vocabulary terms that can be used across different content areas. So for instance, let's say in math, this week we're focusing on matrices, but my word is matrix. How can our English classes or our language arts classes use the word matrix within their content? What about our science classes, right? Science is a little more easy to manipulate there with using those vocabulary words from the math classes. But then still think about how can our gym classes use those terms? How can our art or chorus classes use those terms as well? So we just really want to start putting a bigger focus on all across the curriculums, right, and making sure that we can get our students well prepared for those EOGs at the end of the school year. Our second goal is A 3.01, which states instructional teams use student learning data to identify students in need of instructional support or enhancement. A 4.02 states teams of special educators, general education teachers, and related service providers meet regularly to enhance and unify instructional planning and program implementation for students with disabilities. Now, these last 2 goals really kind of do match up well together. And again, with some of these new proposed plans, some new bodies that could possibly come into the building, I think are going to help us to really get towards this goal a little bit better this year. And then finally, we have E 1.06. The school regularly communicates with parents and guardians about its expectations of them and the importance of the curriculum of the home. So here, this again is just reminding us that this is going to stay a goal probably every year to make sure that we're staying on top of communicating with our parents and guardians back at home so they can help us, right? They can help us to ensure their students' success. So let's talk about a couple budgeting plans that'll help us to get closer to that finish line of growth and achievement that we're after for all of our 360 students. You know, here at Grand Prix Elementary School, we are so lucky that we have a dedicated counselor, we have a dedicated social worker, a very large number of teachers and teacher assistants, especially in comparison to those other schools who operate much like we do. And this year, we don't have any new teachers. So I appreciate that you all are continuing to love being a Grand Prix Grizzly so much that you chose to stay. As we prepare for the school year, we need to remind ourselves or introduce ourselves to the Leandro plan, right, that calls for all students to be afforded a sound basic education. Well, to the Grand Prix Grizzlies, that means learning is equitable. It means our students have access to more staff who will meet their social, emotional, and academic needs. And our students are competitive and have access to technology. With that information in the forefront and with those score trends in mind, let's discuss some ways that we can ensure that we are in compliance with the Leandro plan. As you see at the bottom of the slide, bottom left-hand side, we have a breakdown of the number of teachers per grade and area, along with the number of TAs that are available to them. What do we learn from looking at this chart? Well, what stands out to me immediately is that our tested areas have no TAs. So take a minute to think about all of these different connections. All right, the first plan that we're going to take a look at shows that our budget of $90,000 will be spent on the following allocations, and this one is a little bit more student focused. So first, we're going to start off by adding a multi-classroom leader 1. They are base price $10,000. They will function to work with the chair for grades 3, 4, and 5 in developing plans and focus points for the whole grade team. They will also be available to coach up individual teachers to increase their teaching strengths and content knowledge and become the facilitator for those PLT meetings. So again, that goes back to our school improvement goals number 2 and 3. Then we're talking about adding an expanded impact teacher 3. Their base price is also $10,000. The EIT will open up an opportunity to lessen the class sizes for the most needed grade level, and right now that's our 5th grade team. When you add insurance and retirement pay, that takes the total amount for them to $26,368. We're also looking at adding 2 certified tutors who will work 10 hours per week for the 36 weeks of the school year. That amounts to $31,003.20. Every grade level has a TA, again, except for grades 3 through 5. Having the 2 tutors available will help with small group instruction, and they will work on a rotating schedule throughout the week. So let's say on Monday, they spend 1 hour total with each of the 4 third grade classes. Wednesday, they spend 40 minutes with each of the 3 fourth grade classes. And on Friday, they'll have more time to spend with the 5th grade classes because there will be only 2 of those classes instead of 3, thanks to the EIT absorbing one of those classes. They'd be able to spend up to 2 hours as necessary with the 3rd grade classes. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, they would flip and they would work specifically with our ESL and EC department or as needed throughout the day. We have also worked in 3 days for TNTP coaching days for CKLA at $21.65 a day, and 3 days for Eureka Math coaching for $1,500 a day, bringing the total here to $10,995. So because we don't always want to subject our students to on-screen learning, we do understand that there is a need for printing and binding that's still prevalent. So for this area, we've allocated an additional $500. Also want to bring up the fact that just because we are Title I school, it doesn't mean that our students don't deserve the same fun learning opportunities that students at other schools receive. We also know that 99% of our students receive free lunch. Many of their parents are facing some pretty serious financial hardships. So for this reason, I thought it only right to include at least one educational field trip for each grade level, and we would foot the bill. So for about 360 students, with most costs of these trips being around about $20, that's going to equate to about $7,200. We've included 3 additional Eureka manipulative kits, which come in at $275 per kit. And this is to ensure that our EIT and our tutors are equipped with the tools necessary. We have allocated $2,608.80 to new library books. As we continue to drive towards that academic excellence, it only makes sense to spend more money on newer, higher interest texts that we, of course, would need to encourage our students to check out. There are $2,000 set aside for computer software and supplies. And, again, while we don't want to bog our students down with yet another new tool, we also don't want them to miss out on opportunities for another avenue that can help us to provide instructional support. There's $1,500 to be used for furniture and equipment. We came up with this with the thought in mind about students who might benefit from having options for alternative seating. And then there's going to be transportation costs, of course, associated with all those field trips. So we allocated $2,000 for that. The final $5,000 is set aside for parent and family engagement, with $907.20 going towards postage for those quarterly report cards, $500 for supplies and materials. Here we're thinking about those handouts or things that we might need to give away at those parent nights. Most of the information, of course, does need to still be sent out to parents already via email, the communication app, the robocall, and of course your weekly newsletters that get sent home in the take-home folders on Tuesdays. But this is just another avenue that we can use to really make sure that we have everything necessary to keep our parents abreast of what's happening. And then we have $3,592.80 to pay for snacks or other food and refreshments. I know that might sound kind of like a small number, but we can or should keep in mind also that there are things that can be made here in the cafeteria as well that can help us to offset some of those costs. All right, next, if you take a look at the second budget, which is down here in the bottom right corner of the slide, This one's going to be a little bit more teacher focused, and you'll notice what I mean here in a second. So the multi-classroom leader and the EIT are going to stay the same with a total of $26,368. In this budget, we do increase our tutors by one for the same length and amount of time as the first budget. So meaning we would go from 2 tutors to having 3 certified tutors. With this plan, we can either free up the tutors from splitting the week. So we have one committed tutor for each grade level team, or we can continue with the previously proposed plan of splitting the weeks, but we have the third tutor solely for EL and EC assistance. With 3 tutors, this would take that line total to $46,504.80. This plan maintains the same number of Eureka and CKLA training days, which is 3 each, for a total of $10,995. And then that leaves us with $1,132.20 for printing and binding, which is an increase from the previous plan, an increase of $632.20. The usage for the $5,000 for parent engagement did stay the same as well. Now, please notice with this second plan, there is no additional money for new books, no additional money for offsetting the cost of field trips, for purchasing additional manipulative kits, or new software. Now let's talk about how either of these budgets actually connect to our academic achievement, right? Because it's ultimately what it's all about. So while we did meet growth by the end of the last school year, we're still struggling to get all of our Grizzly Racers past that finish line, in particular our students with disabilities, okay? Now, both plans that have been suggested do focus on increasing the number of teacher leaders in our highest loaded classes and allow for an opportunity to get those who are content experts in the building to help get us all on the same winner's podium. The tutors that have been suggested would definitely be utilized in those classrooms where the MTSS data shows that our struggling students are beginning to comprise more of that middle section of the pyramid, more so than the top, where it's supposed to be a much smaller number. Reducing our class sizes, especially for our tested grade levels, will also help tremendously. Because the area where we have seen the slowest growth is in reading, I've suggested those training days for CKLA, as these would occur in the first 4 weeks of school, and again just before winter break, and then there will be a final training in March as we prepare for end of grade testing. The first plan includes funds for educational field trips and library books, where the second one doesn't. As a reminder, though, part of our Grizzly mission is to help students achieve excellence, not just academically, but also socially and emotionally. Please keep this in mind when voting for your choice of how we should allocate our funds. Allowing students an opportunity to get outside the classroom and into learning spaces that are still fun and adventurous will allow them to begin making those connections right there on the spot, or thinking even after the field trips, you guys can come back in and help them to continue to make those connections with their content. Again, with a push to increase our reading scores, more work needs to be done in the literacy area. So between the CKLA training and the suggestions given there and the new library text, we can get our students where they need to be, or at least on grade level. The second plan, again, does not include funding for a field trip or new library books, but there would be more money available for printing and binding, which could come in handy with the new trainings you're going to receive from the MCL. As I mentioned earlier, the 5th grade classes have an average size of 19, while the others are between 13 and 15. Having the MCL, the EIT, and a number of certified tutors, this is going to allow those teachers to work with smaller class sizes, work with smaller groups more often, and then they're going to open up an opportunity for more focused work with our students with disabilities, as they have clearly been the subgroup over the past 3 years to not show as much growth. So we've talked about how the budget suggestions match up with our achievement. Now let's take a look for a second at how the budgets connect to the school improvement plan. So both budget suggestions do pay special attention to our school improvement plan. As a reminder, here are the goals, and then here's a short explanation of how the budgets meet this goal. So for A 2.07, both budgets will help us work toward this goal with the increased number of teacher supports, the CKLA training, and training of suggestions provided through working in PLTs with the MCL. For A 3.01, again, here, both budgets allot for this through working in PLTs to discuss the data. The grade level chair for grades 3 through 5 will be able to meet more regularly with the MCL to discuss the data, and and then work towards suggestions for improvement and ways to better support our struggling scholars. A 4.02, while both budgets do have line items that include multiple tutors, the second budget that allots for 3 would make having the team meeting weekly or even more often than weekly a little more feasible. And then finally, E 1.06, the $5,000 set aside in each budget to ensure that postage is paid for those quarterly report cards and other pertinent information, the supplies and materials needed to send home if necessary, and then an allocation for refreshments on parent nights. That will all help us to meet this goal in particular. Again, this for E 1.06, what we've just discussed, this is all in addition to those robocalls, the emails, the weekly classroom newsletters, and the communication app usage that we utilize to keep our parents informed and engaged. All right, Grand Prix pit crew, this is the moment that you've all been waiting for, okay? Y'all are now going to head back to your halls and meet as a grade level team to discuss the options and the information that's been presented here in this slideshow. After taking a few minutes to comb back through the 2 proposed budgets, keeping again in mind what you think is best and most needed for our scholars to succeed, please follow either the URL here. Make sure that as you type in the bit.ly URL that you pay special attention to the capitalization of those letters, otherwise it will not work. Or you can scan the QR code there on your phone, or you can click on this live link here entitled Grand Prix 22-23 Budget Voting here on slide 10. Please make sure that you cast your vote by tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. And as always, if there are ever any questions or concerns, please don't hesitate to come by and see me and we can chat. I do look very forward to seeing your responses, and I appreciate you all taking the time to use your vote to move our students a lot closer to that winner's podium. Thank you.